Hi there, my name's Diane Wittry, and I'm the conductor of the Allentown Symphony Orchestra. And I have here with me today our wonderful concertmaster, Eliezer Gutman. And Eliezer has performed with the Allentown Symphony for 16 years, since 2004. And he sits in that front chair just to the side of me and does a fabulous job. So let's welcome Eliezer. How are you today?
Hello, hello. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well, thank you, Diane. Thanks for doing that.
Good.
It's really a nice way to introduce me and introduce concertmaster. Generally, it's a very, very important position for every orchestra.
Yeah. So tell us, people might not know exactly what a concertmaster does. What is your job, and how is that different than some of the other violinists that are sitting in the section with you?
Yeah, so concertmaster, it's the first seat of the violin section, or the person who sits the closest to the conductor, I guess. And the main role of the concertmaster is to, first of all, decide some material which is called bowings, which to mark the bowings for make decisions about how the bow will go up or down for the whole piece, pretty much. And those bowings are transferred to the other principals, and they need to somehow get their bowings fixed to the bowings that the concertmaster is deciding. So that's one of the main role, which is relatively important to the way that every piece is being played regarding strings. And it's obviously a whole theory about writing bowings and making decision about bowings, which I'm not going to do in more detail at this point. Other issues that are considered to be for the concertmaster is he's a leading role, and all the other principles of the string section, and generally sometimes even in the winds and brass, we are kind of looking at each other and making some body motions just to make sure that if we have something together, we will more be together, just by looking and having several similar body motions to get us to be together and play together. And I would say the last point would be that the concertmaster is almost like the conductor's right hand, or kind of a helper. If the conductor wants sometimes the concertmaster to demonstrate something, he or she needs to be ready to demonstrate, and just to have the right feel of a certain part of the music that that Diane has in mind generally, and I will need to be able to transmit it to the orchestra and to the violin and the string section. And obviously the one part that I forgot is being able to play all the solo parts that are written in the music for one person only. And that's, of course, what we're going to be discussing a tiny bit today in the main piece, the Scheherazade, which has a very, very important part in that music.
That's great, Eliezer. Well, speaking of Scheherazade, this is a piece by Rimsky Korsakov that was written in 1888, and it does have these amazing solos for the concertmaster. And the piece is written about the 1001 Arabian Nights. And with this music, Rimsky-Korsakov gave the part of Scheherazade, who's telling the wonderful story night after night, to the concertmaster, to the first violin. And it has some amazing solos, and they're very difficult. Can you tell us a little bit how you prepare for solos like this?
Yeah, I I played that piece so many times, and it's funny. When I grew up, I played in a youth orchestra. Actually, my wife was there too. So, but we already played it. I already played the solos there, and it's interesting. I mean, you know how you learn it when you are younger. You have something to build on, which is very, very important. As you know, even big soloists these days, it's to memorize a new piece at our age, it's much, much harder than actually to know. We even played it when you're younger, and living it together, coming back to it, it's much, much easier. But generally speaking, each orchestral piece solo has, of course, different parts, and especially in Scheherazade, it starts with such a melodious solo. It's just the most continuous sound that I need to make sure that I'm producing, and I need to just it's pretty much preparing the piece, even though it actually starts with huge brass and chords, but actually after about maybe less than a minute, you transform that beginning to a completely different place altogether. So I almost need to disconnect myself sometime to what's going on around. And now it's me playing by myself. And the very, very beginning, it's really relatively soft, high on E string, and I need to be on my own bubble in a way to be able to transfer the very beginning, the very harsh and fortissimo beginning of the piece to immediately the opposite of what you just heard, and that's relatively hard. Going on to the next, each solo, it's a tiny bit more and more involved. The second solo and the third solo is still in the first movement, are relatively similar to the beginning, but just a tiny bit different. And we're going on to the solos that are a tiny bit more demanding, which involves double stops and even triple stops. And those are really solos that are almost like violin cadenzas, I would say, that you need to spend hours and hours to master them, and they're still hard. That's kind of the life of a performer. It's like you're never satisfied. It's always, you can always do better. There's not, even if you are satisfied at the moment, you still can do better. That's kind of the thinking of every musician. I'm sure Diane will agree with every piece that you conduct can always obviously be better. Everything it's kind of in relation to what you are expecting, and next time that you're performing it, you will expect it even better. And so those are the kind of the middle solos, which almost are the cadenzas for the violinist. And then we're going towards the end, and it starts exactly like the beginning, but it gets all the way towards the fingerboard, all the way up there, very, very high, and ending with an extremely high note on the violin, which is obviously the main point, the highest note on which ends the piece, which kind of very, very interesting. So that's really one of the greatest solo in the literature of the concertmaster in an orchestral piece.
Yeah, and you did such a beautiful job, as people are going to hear when they hear the recording of the Allentown Symphony playing this work with you, playing all these solos. It was just phenomenal. The beautiful sound and the nuance of the phrasing was just stellar.
Thank you.
I know, Eliezer, you play with more orchestras than just the Allentown Symphony. And I know you also are involved in chamber music and teaching. And why don't you give us a little bit more about your background as a musician and then also some of the other groups that you perform with regularly?
Yeah, we came to this country in 1990. Both my wife and myself came to study. My wife eventually graduated with a PhD in linguistics from the University of Delaware, and I came to study with the late David Arben, who was a third chair of the Philadelphia Orchestra. And it's very interesting. Mr. Arben knew my teacher back in Israel, and that's how the connection came about for me to come here and study with him at the University of the Arts. And it was study here with Mr. Arben was almost like earth-shaking for me. It was such a different concept of violin playing, which it was hard for me to adjust in the very beginning. And as you know, how as you grow older, not that we're that old, but as you grow older, you appreciate so much what you learn, and you just kind of almost hear your teacher talking to you while you play something. And I do feel that with Mr. Arben. And by the way, Mr. Arben was the only family member who survived the Holocaust. And he was telling me many stories. He had a number on his hand, you know, but that's kind of a side story. And so I'm involved in other orchestras. As a freelance musician, I play with the Delaware Symphony, the Reading Symphony, Kennett Symphony, many orchestras, and Opera Delaware, different orchestras I'm involved in. And you know how that it came up to be that I have a steady string quartet, which we are very lucky. We are sponsored by Mrs. Tatiana Copeland, who lives in Wilmington, Delaware, and she's a great sponsor for the arts around here. And we are performing regularly throughout the year, and that chamber music becomes such a joy. Not that other my musical activities are not, but for orchestra playing, which that's pretty much what I do. Here and there I do play solo with orchestras, but most of my activity is playing in orchestra. Playing chamber music, it gets you to almost to the middle point of being a soloist, and there is so much repertoire for chamber. Almost every composer that, wrote symphonies, you can think of Beethoven, Mozart, all the big composers were very proud of their chamber music, almost even more than the big symphony works, because chamber music, there are only 4 people, generally speaking, can be a tiny bit more, but we're talking about the string quartet, and it's almost music that it is so intimate, and you can so much hear every person, and it's much harder to produce such a great piece with only four musicians. And as I said, all the big composers and almost every composer is writing for that type of combination of musicians. And I'm just to say, I'm involved in teaching. I have some success. You see success in teaching by the progress of your students, and I can tell you that I do see lots of students that are improving and they seem to like it. I'm not the easiest one to deal with in a way, because I'm not giving up. I want want them to do their best, and sometimes students, I can hint that they need to practice a tiny bit more. And the main thing for me regarding students is that they're doing their best to play well. I know that not everybody has the same talent. Some kids will improve faster just because they have talent, but then they stop practicing. So there's lots of kind of give and take with students, but I'm kind of demanding the best from each of them. Then sometimes it creates a tiny bit of problems. But I know that I'm doing my best to teach them the best way that I think they need to progress. That's pretty much my activities during the year, and I'm trying to juggle myself. Pretty much, I'm a performer, which is a big problem, especially these days. So, if I would be more of a teacher, I would have less problems. But I just like to perform. I still practice several hours a day, every day, even though nothing is actually scheduled. But I need to keep everything alive. I need to keep my head working and keeping my fingers and my muscles in a good shape. So I love what I do pretty much. And this of course, this COVID time, it's obviously the hardest times, I know, for many people, but for musicians in particular, because we're all want to please other people. We are performing for audiences, and at this point, this is not happening. So it's pretty much a hard times for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eliezer, you mentioned about teaching students. Do you have any advice that you would give to young violin students that want to pursue a professional career? If you had to name one or two things that you think would be important to share with them.
I mean, the one word that I was thinking about the young musician is, how do you say? I think the word is perseverance. I think, as a violinist or as a musician, you don't actually you don't feel that you are improving. You constantly practice, and just by practicing and each day trying to find more and more perfection, that's the way that you are going to get better and better. It's very easy for us to hit ourselves in a way that you can say, oh, it's too hard for me. Don Juan, I can never play Don Juan. It's very, very difficult. And those notes are not for me, or however, that should never be in our mind. There will always be somebody that will be better than you, for sure. Even in auditions, you cannot look at anybody else. The only thing that you can look is only on yourself and getting better. Because if you constantly look at somebody else and see, oh wow, that person plays amazing. It's like you get yourself into trouble just by doing it to yourself, and that person might play better, but maybe they have other problems. It's all a conception. But I think if we focus on ourselves to improve what we like to do, I think that's the main thing that I would like young performers to remember, and to get it inside that you are the one who are going to succeed because you believe in yourself.
Wow. That's really good advice there. Yeah, because you're right. There always will be people that are out there that either are better or you perceive are better, but you really do have to just, it's really you and your own mentality about
Right.
how you approach your
Right.
music making and what you as an individual have to offer. So that's really great. Listen, Eliezer, I want to thank you for joining us today for this little interview, and we're all looking forward to hearing you play those amazing solos in the show.
I'm looking forward. Thank you for having me, Diane.
Great. And I do
so
hope
much. It was a pleasure.
I do hope we'll be back doing concerts together soon.
I hope so. I'm praying for that to happen very, very soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Eliezer.
All right. Thank you, Diane. Take care.